there's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm your host for this episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. Today, I've got Patrick McKenna, founder of Strike Social. Patrick, how you doing today?
I'm good, Nikki. Thank you. How are you?
I am so well. It's pretty gray here in Austin today, but you know what? We're pushing through.
It's going to start getting hot in Austin, isn't it?
It is. Well, you know what? Something I think I read that you grew up in Spokane. I spent most of my childhood in the Pacific Northwest, so gray kind of feels like home to me.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Yep. I did Spokane and Seattle.
Yeah. So you're going to be talking to us today about 3 reasons why salespeople should not be afraid of AI. But before we get into that, I'd love you to take just a few minutes and talk about, your background, and what you guys are up to over there at Strike Social these days.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, my background. I'm a little bit older, so I've been around for a while. It's hard to know where to start, but in terms of early in my career, I was at Microsoft for 12 years in audio and video on the internet, which is sort of enabling us to do what we're doing right now. Back in the early days, this is 97.
97, yeah, I read that.
Yeah, 97. And we were on the bleeding edge of that. So bandwidth a lot of it was still dial up, 56K stuff, and getting the bandwidth picture clearer helped everybody get to where you can have full screen video on your computer and do what you're doing at night with Netflix. So I've been in this space for a long time. At Strike Social, we're an advertising company. So we started in video advertising. We partnered with Google back in 2013. And, the rest has been history. In 2017, we were the 17th fastest growing company in the US, and the fastest growing, company that did what we do. Kind of, I guess people call us a tech-enabled agency. So
you're a pioneer, a trailblazer, all that, an early adopter. And that I think is what's so exciting about having you talk about this topic today. So we were sort of discussing offline a lot of the reasons that this ongoing debate is about, whether or not, salespeople should embrace or be afraid of AI. And you fall squarely on the side of embrace, and with good reason. And it's reasons outside of just your success with what you've been able to do with AI and machine learning, but just sort of these core ideas that make sense about what particularly salespeople stand to gain from the use of AI. One of those had to do with the ability to diagnose and make more efficient the jobs that we're already doing as salespeople. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of tools out there, and if you're a company in software at this point, you've got to be working in artificial intelligence. I mean, we recognized that back in 2014. The idea was to take the human clicks and thoughts and capture that into software and technology, right? We wanted to institutionalize the knowledge as much as we could into the business. And I think that on the sales side, because we don't focus on our software isn't for salespeople. It's to help people perform in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
But we leverage companies that do that. There's I can name some. Outreach.io, I think, does a really good job. And I promise you that there's tons of data and artificial intelligence going on at that company to help you be really just more efficient.
Yeah. Another thing you and I were talking about offline is, sort of my struggles as an individual contributor, as a salesperson, had a lot to do with that, had a lot to do with, the lack of AI that my organizations had adopted. And it just, there was so much uncertainty, like so many whys gone unanswered, right? Why am I more successful this month than that month? Why am I more successful when I say these words versus that? What are the words, tones, phrases that are effective, and how can we scale that? And AI, of course, has just sort of blown that open for a lot of us. So there's sort of the first reason. And another thing that you brought up that I hadn't even thought about with respect to product teams and marketing teams and how they interact with sales teams was this idea that there, things like gut feelings and being detail oriented aren't things that AI is doing yet. And so there'll always need to be, or at least for the foreseeable future, a human at the center of those. Talk about that feedback loop and how important you've seen salespeople be in your organization for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I'm really happy to be on your show. I'm a sales guy. So I started in sales in 91. And I had a pretty good idea what my activities were producing back in the day. I mean, you can kind of see like, okay, I'm going to do outreach on some of these days, and then I've got all the material I need to put together to go be successful with my meetings. And I was always really prepared for my meetings. I always wanted to be really prepared because I knew how hard it was to get meetings. Mm-hmm. So to your point, like what happens is when you're going through the preparation and meeting phases, the outreach part sort of tends to fall off. And then all of a sudden you're looking at your pipe and you're like, well, I did a great job selling, but now I've got to start over with my outreach. And so, I think what's really cool about AI and what some of these companies are doing with helping salespeople is it helps them diagnose where their weaknesses are. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like if you can be more efficient in your outreach and it doesn't take you a full day to do outreach anymore, you can schedule some time during the day, or you can actually even like schedule when you want the outreach to go out. So you can do it on Saturday or a Sunday or whatever. And then you can see which messages are resonating and which ones aren't resonating. And so, for me, like for a salesperson to get that feedback loop and for management to get that feedback loop, it's really for us to be able to help you like, hey, look, based on what we're seeing here, maybe you're just not successful in the meetings. So what is it that we can do to get you to be more successful in your meeting? You know what I mean? You got to be able to diagnose something. And back in the day, it was just it felt like I was just opening a phone book back in the day, right? And just making calls. So
So I think that what you're talking about is this is the point at which most salespeople, because I think most folks are there. I'm here in the Austin startup scene, and the tech stack is real, right? Folks are using your outreaches, your sales lofts, all these outreach tools that are doing what you're talking about, right? The diagnosing, the helping folks become more efficient, more consistent. But I think that where a lot of folks are is like that's where they want it to stop. Right?
Yeah.
That's where they want the benefits or the reach of AI to stop because they haven't opened their eyes or let themselves be confident enough about the other things that salespeople have to offer. And so when you and I were talking about this idea of the feedback loop, we were talking about how when you put a salesperson in front of a prospect or even a current customer, and that salesperson is hearing that feedback from the prospect or from the customer, that's not something AI can do yet.
Well, and I don't think it ever will. I mean, I feel like that human interaction with the customer and getting the feedback from the customer, you just get more. I mean, you can get more off of body language and what they're saying and how they're saying it to you, and taking that information back to management and management taking that back to product that's invaluable. I mean, that's what's gonna set the company on its course to what are we going to build next? Is what the salesperson telling me a corner case where it's just this one customer that's kind of being difficult about our product, or is this something that, wow, this could be a really big game changer for us if we go into this? How long do we think this will take? And where does it fit in the list of where we are in terms of product development? I absolutely rely on my salespeople to be, the eyes and ears, if you will, and that feedback loop to product and strategy. So sales guys aren't going away, in my opinion.
It's story time again, and we're talking about search engine marketing. Today, I'm going to tell you about a challenge within Pelican Case's B2B division. Pelican needed a partner with deep B2B expertise that could get them a massive bump in leads from their pay-per-click campaigns without increasing spend. After vetting a handful of agencies, they decided to go with Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency located in Southern California. Directive took on this challenge by refining their targeting and building custom landing pages for their advertising efforts. Once implemented, they saw a 208% increase in conversion rate. Needless to say, Pelican Cases met their initiative. And I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
I love it. And I've seen this play out. Some of the best teams I've worked on in these startup streets have been the ones that had that collaborative feedback element to their culture that included like product and marketing, and that like you're talking about, that relied on the salespeople to listen and really soak up what they were hearing from the market to improve things. And like you said, that's just not a thing AI will maybe ever be able to do. And then the third point that we had identified as far as why sales folks should just relax and embrace this thing is that the decision-making processes for most B2B organizations have so many layers to them that if you take out the human element, it's just going to leave a lot of people a lot of frustrated. And then you kind of gave some examples of how we see that in our personal lives as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're, to your point, like finding the entry point is one thing, and then figuring out how that company makes purchasing decisions and how many people are involved in that process is something else, right? And you've got to sell all the way through that process. Depending on how big the item is, you could be going all the way up to the C-suite or the CEO even about getting that decision done. And the messages along the way to each one of those people is different. And so the sales rep kind of needs to know that process. And that's hard to capture in marketing. To your point, we didn't really talk about this part, but from a marketing perspective, each one of those people needs to be marketed to and messaged to probably a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And so again, like that, all of that stuff needs to come back to marketing, because sales reps need to be supported by marketing. Otherwise, they're just knocking on doors all day long. And that's not nearly as fun as having like customers come into your website, right? So
right.
Look for you.
Oh, I geek out on account-based marketing all day long. So
right. What program do you guys use? Do you guys use one or?
We don't use one, but we do. There's some clients of ours that work in that. And Terminus is one of our clients. And so it's something that we believe in. But just like in my own personal branding, say my own personal like LinkedIn strategy, and I guess to another point of what humans need to do. If what B2B is about ultimately is at the heart of it is turning relationships into revenue. I don't know a lot of people who have relationships with AI the way that they have relationships with actual humans, and so the way that we're using that, I think, is a sort of a fourth point to hit on as far as how to stay ahead of what you think AI is trying to take from you and sort of use it to your advantage. But I do think it's important to sort of wrap that point up when we talk about always having that human element in the decision-making process. You mentioned the elements of AI that find themselves in the consumer space when you're trying to call your bank or, something that you're trying to interact with and you're talking to, AI, and the difference in the experience that you have and trying to make a decision when you're talking to a person. I think you were talking about, trying to get to somebody at your bank. Talk about that for us real quick as an example.
There are just, when you go through the prompt, and I remember they really tried to get rid of customer service in probably about 10 years ago. And it got really, really frustrating. It was the same way with your mobile phone service. They've tried to take the human element out of that. And I applaud them for that, because sometimes you could just take care of the problem online. Sometimes you can take care of it through the prompt, and that's great. It makes them more efficient. But there are times when you just absolutely need to talk to somebody because something went wrong. And the bot that they have in the chat window isn't working for you, and the teleprompt isn't working for you. And so you need to talk to a human. What's really cool about it is what I've noticed recently is the people are more enabled now, because you can tell that they're sitting in front of a computer that has an entire look of the account, and you as a customer, they're able to get through it faster. So they're actually, the human beings are actually faster, and that's probably a lot of AI and data-driven stuff going on behind the scenes there for them. So it's just become a more pleasant experience across the board. Obviously I'm deep in this stuff, right? We've been doing it for a long time, and it has improved our performance, the speed at which we can get to a customer problem, just across the board. And it makes you feel really good to be able to do that. You want happy customers. And when you look at our company and you look at the growth, it's one thing to grow, but you're not going to grow fast without retaining. So that's the thing that I'm probably most proud of, is that people look at us and go, wow, these guys are offering something that I don't want to leave, which is super. So
right. This is great. So like I said, I'm fascinated by just how early you understood the power really of technology in general, but certainly of AI and machine learning. And it's great what you guys have been able to do with it at Strike Social. This has been a really, I think, important conversation, and we kept it cash. so that was good. Any, parting wisdom you want to leave with any of our listeners to the topic of AI, machine learning, or just your experience as a salesperson in B2B and coming up, and then let us know how folks can connect with you, keep up with you, whether that's LinkedIn, your email, or whatever that is. If you could just do that for us real quick.
Yeah, no problem. I guess my parting shot here would be, just don't be afraid of it. It's going to make your life, it's going to make all of our lives better. I'm super excited about the future of business and consumerism and everything across the board that AI is going to bring to the table. Reaching me is pretty simple. I'm really available on LinkedIn. And then, of course, you can come to our website, and we take advantage of lots of artificial intelligence there. You can get us through a drift bot. You can, reach us through Hello. We're pretty efficient at getting back to people, and that's part of being a fast-growing company. So, yeah. So Patrick McKenna on LinkedIn is a good spot, and strikesocial.com is a great spot too.
Got it. So y'all heard it here. That's how you can get a hold of Patrick and get some more little jewels of wisdom on AI from the early days of technology, from flip phones to where we are now. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks so much, Patrick.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We totally get it.
We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.